The big courtroom was quiet. Too quiet. Every seat was filled with different alien species from across the galaxy. They all came to hear one story. A story that would change how they saw humans forever. Commander Jake Sullivan sat in the front row. His face showed no emotion. His hands rested on his knees, steady and calm. He wore his blue military uniform with pride. On his chest were many medals from wars fought in distant stars. But today he was not here to fight. He was here to listen. Across the room, behind a metal table, sat Zekthar. He was from the Vorthak Empire. His body was tall and thin, with 4 long arms and skin that changed colors with his mood. Right now his skin was dark purple. This meant fear. His large black eyes looked around the room, never staying in one place too long. The judge was a being made of pure energy. It spoke without a mouth, its voice coming from everywhere at once. The court will now hear testimony from Zekthar of the Vorthak Empire. You may begin. Zekthar stood up slowly. All 4 of his arms shook. He had been a soldier for over 200 years. He had seen many battles. He had fought beside many different species, but nothing had prepared him for what he learned about humans. I've fought with the humans, Zekthar began. His voice was soft but clear. During the border wars of 2387. I thought they were just another warrior species. I was wrong. Very wrong. He paused and looked directly at Jake Sullivan. The human commander met his gaze without blinking. The first time I saw humans fight was on Kepler 442b. It is a small moon covered in rocks and ice. The enemy had us trapped. Their big guns were shooting at us from the hills. My people were scared. We wanted to retreat. This is normal. This is smart. Zekthar's skin turned from purple to red. This meant anger, but not at the humans. He was angry at the memory. But the humans did not retreat. They did something that made no sense. Sergeant Lisa Carter, a small human female, stood up. The enemy. Guns were still shooting. She looked at her soldiers and said, "Follow me." Then she ran straight at the enemy. The courtroom was very quiet now. Everyone was listening. I watched her squad run through a field of mines. Mines are bombs buried in the ground. When you step on them, they explode. Any smart soldier knows to avoid them. But these humans ran right through them. Some of the mines exploded, some humans died, but the others kept running. Zekthar stopped talking for a moment. He touched one of his arms where an old scar was visible. Lisa Carter stepped on a mine. The explosion threw her 10 feet in the air. Her leg was badly hurt, blood was everywhere. I thought she would stop fighting, any normal soldier would, but she got up. She kept going. She used her broken leg to kick dirt into the faces of enemy soldiers. The alien judge asked, "Why did she continue fighting with such severe injuries?" I asked her the same question later. Zekthar replied. "She looked at me like I was stupid." She said, "My boys needed me to clear the path." Her boys, that is, what she called her soldiers. Like they were her children. Jake Sullivan allowed himself a small smile. He remembered Lisa Carter. She had died 2 years later in another battle. She never stopped fighting until the very end. Zekthar continued his story. After we took the enemy position, I thought the battle was over. But Captain Ryan Brooks got a message on his radio. Command told him that more enemies were coming. Too many to fight. They ordered him to retreat immediately. "What did Captain Brooks say?" asked the judge. He said no. Just like that. No discussion. No fear in his voice. The radio operator told him again that retreat was the only option. Captain Brooks said, "We hold the line here. Tell command we are not moving." Zekthar's skin changed to yellow now. This meant confusion. "I have been a soldier for 200 years. I have fought in 50 different wars. Every species I know follows the same rules. When you cannot win, you retreat. You save your soldiers to fight another day. This is basic military thinking, but humans do not follow these rules." He walked closer to the center of the courtroom. Captain Brooks and his 43 soldiers held that position for 18 hours. 18 hours against an army of 3,000 enemies. They had no food. They had very little ammunition. They had no hope of winning. But they stayed. How many survived? The judge asked. Zekthar's skin turned black. This was the color of deep sadness. 12. Only 12 humans lived through that battle. Captain Brooks was not one of them, but they held the line. The enemy could not pass. Our main army had time to get into position. We won the war because those humans refused to run away. The courtroom was completely silent now. Many of the alien observers looked uncomfortable. This kind of fighting was not normal. It was not logical. I went to see the battlefield after, Zekthar said quietly. The human bodies were arranged in perfect defensive positions. Even in death, they looked like they were still protecting something. I found Captain Brooks behind a pile of rocks. He had used his own body to block a hole in our defenses. There were 17 enemy soldiers dead around him. He had fought them with his bare hands when his gun ran out of bullets. Jake Sullivan closed his eyes for a moment. He had read the reports. He knew every detail of that battle. But hearing it from Zekthar made it real again. That was when I first understood, Zekthar said. Humans do not fight wars the same way other species do. For most of us, war is about winning and losing, about politics and territory. But for humans, war is personal. They fight like every battle is the most important thing that will ever happen. The alien judge spoke again. What do you mean by personal? Zekthar looked around the room at all the different species watching him. When my people fight, we fight for our empire. When the crystalline fight, they fight for their hive mind. When the makers fight, they fight for their profit. But humans fight for each other. They fight like every other human is their family. They will die before they let their friends down. He pointed at Jake Sullivan. I asked Commander Sullivan once why his species fights so hard. He told me something I will never forget. He said, because someone has to, and if not us, then who? The testimony continued, but these words hung in the air like a challenge to every species in the galaxy. The judge asked Zekthar to continue. The alien's skin was now pale gray, which meant he was remembering something very bad. The worst thing I saw, Zekthar said slowly, was at Titan Base. It was a human military station on the edge of space. The enemy surrounded it for 3 months. 3 long months of hell. He walked to the center of the courtroom. His 4 arms moved as he talked, showing the size and shape of the base. I was there as an observer. My job was to watch how humans fought and write reports for my commanders. They wanted to learn human tactics, but what I learned was not about tactics. It was about something much deeper. Jake Sullivan leaned forward in his seat. He knew this story well. He had been there too, but as a junior officer. The memories were still fresh in his mind. Titan Base was not big, Zekthar continued. Maybe 2,000 humans lived there. Soldiers, engineers, medical staff, and some civilians. The enemy had 50,000 troops around us. They had big ships in space and heavy weapons on the ground. Any smart commander would have surrendered on the first day. The alien judge asked, what did the humans do instead? Major Helen Davis was in charge. She was a small woman with short brown hair and green eyes. She called all the humans together in the main hall. I was there too, because I was part of the Alliance. She stood on a table so everyone could see her. Zekthar's voice became softer, like he was sharing a secret. She said, we are surrounded. We have no way out. Command cannot send help for at least 6 months. The enemy wants us to surrender. Then she paused and looked at every person in the room. But surrender is not in our manual. We stay. We fight. We hold this base until help comes, or until we all die trying. The courtroom was very quiet. Many aliens looked shocked. To them, this sounded like madness. The enemy commander sent us messages every day. He offered good terms for surrender. He promised to treat prisoners well. He even offered to let the civilians go free. But Major Davis never answered these messages. She had her radio operator send the same reply every time. Titan Base is still here, Zekthar moved closer to Jake Sullivan. The first month was the hardest. The enemy cut off all our supply lines. No food, no medicine, no ammunition coming in. My people would have negotiated. We would have found a way to end the siege with honor. But the humans made a different choice. He paused and looked at his hands. Major Davis organized the food rationing. Herself. She gave everyone just enough to stay alive. But she gave herself less. I saw her eat only once every 2 days. When I asked why, she said, "A commander eats last." This made no sense to me. How can a weak leader make good decisions? The judge asked, "Did the humans complain about the food shortage?" Never, not once. They shared everything they had. When someone got sick, others gave up their food to help them get better. When ammunition ran low, they made bullets from scrap metal. They turned the base into a fortress using broken furniture and damaged equipment. Zekthar's skin turned blue, which meant admiration. But the most amazing thing was the medic. Tony Martinez. He was a young human male, maybe 25 years old. He had joined the military to help people, not to fight. During the second month, I was hit by enemy fire during a raid. The plasma bolt went through my side. I was bleeding badly and trapped outside the base walls. The alien touched his side where a scar was still visible. Tony saw me fall from the medical station. The enemy was still shooting. Anyone with sense would have waited for the shooting to stop, but Tony grabbed his medical bag and ran out to help me. He ran through enemy fire like it was just rain. Zekthar's voice became emotional. It took him 6 hours to reach me. 6 hours of crawling through mud and rocks while enemy soldiers shot at him. A plasma bolt hit his legs. Both legs were badly burned, but he kept crawling. He kept coming to help me. Jake Sullivan remembered Tony Martinez. The young medic had received the highest medal for bravery. He had saved 17 lives during the siege before dying in the final battle. When Tony finally reached me, he was badly hurt. But the first thing he did was check my wounds. He used his medical supplies on me, not on himself. I asked him why he risked his life for an alien. He looked confused and said, "You were hurt, weren't you? That's what we do. We help people who are hurt." The judge asked, "How did the siege end?" Zekthar's skin turned black again. In the third month, the enemy got tired of waiting. They brought in bigger weapons. They were going to destroy the base completely. Major Davis called another meeting. She told everyone that the enemy was preparing for a final attack. She said we had 2 choices, surrender or fight to the end. What did the humans choose? They voted. Every person in the base had a choice. Soldiers, civilians, engineers, everyone. The vote was unanimous. They chose to fight. Zekthar looked directly at Jake Sullivan. But Major Davis did not just plan to defend the base. She planned something that was militarily impossible. She decided to attack the enemy first, all of them. 50,000 enemy soldiers with her 2,000 people. The courtroom was filled with shocked whispers. Several alien observers made sounds of disbelief. I told her this was suicide. I begged her to reconsider. She smiled at me and said, "Maybe. But if we're going to die anyway, we might as well take as many of them with us as possible. That way, they can't hurt anyone else." Zekthar's voice became very quiet. The attack began at dawn. Every human who could hold a weapon joined the fight. Old engineers, young medical staff, even the cook from the kitchen. They left the base and charged straight at the enemy lines. What happened? They won. Somehow, impossibly, they won. The enemy was not prepared for a full attack. They expected the humans to defend the base. When 2,000 humans came screaming out of the morning mist, shooting everything they had, the enemy panicked. Zekthar looked at the floor. But the cost was terrible. Only 800 humans survived. Major Davis died in the first hour. Tony Martinez died trying to save wounded enemies. More than half of the defenders were killed or badly injured. The judge asked, "How did the survivors react to such heavy losses?" Zekthar looked up with wonder in his eyes. They celebrated. They sang songs for their dead friends. They cried, but they were proud. They had saved the base. They had won an impossible battle. And then the next day they started rebuilding. They were already planning for the next fight. Jake Sullivan wiped his eyes. He had been one of the 800 survivors. The memory of that day still made him emotional. That was when I truly understood, Zekthar concluded. Humans do not fight to live. They live to fight. For them, dying in battle is not a failure. It is an honor. They would rather die fighting than live in shame. The testimony continued, but everyone in the courtroom was thinking the same thing. What kind of species chooses death over defeat? And what did that mean for the rest of the galaxy? The judge called for a short break. When the court returned, Zekthar looked even more tired. His skin was now a mix of colors, showing many different emotions at once. The third thing I want to tell you about, Zekthar said, happened during the Deep Space Campaign of 2389. After what I saw at Titan Base, I thought I understood humans. I was wrong again. He moved to a different part of the courtroom, his forearms gesturing as he spoke. I volunteered to serve on a human ship, the Liberty's Edge. I wanted to learn their tactics for space combat. My commanders thought this would be useful information. The ship's captain was Ben Cross, a man with gray hair and kind eyes. He welcomed me aboard like I was family. Jake Sullivan nodded. He knew Captain Cross well. They had served together on 3 different ships before Cross got his own command. The Liberty's Edge was not a big warship, Zekthar continued. It was what humans call a patrol vessel. Its job was to protect civilian ships from pirates and raiders. There were only 53 humans on board. I was the 54th crew member, the alien judge asked. What made this assignment different from your previous experiences? Zekthar's skin turned yellow again, the color of confusion. Space combat has rules. Every species follows them. When you are outnumbered, you retreat. When your ship is damaged, you call for help. When you cannot win, you surrender. These rules keep crews alive, but humans have different rules. He paused and looked around the courtroom. We were 3 days out from the Orion Nebula when it happened. The navigator was Katie Wells, a young woman with red hair. She was very smart and always careful with her calculations. She detected enemy ships hiding in the nebula clouds. Zekthar's voice became tense as he remembered. There were 8 enemy ships, raiders with heavy weapons. Our ship was alone. The smart thing to do was to jump to hyperspace immediately and report their location to Fleet Command. Captain Cross looked at the sensor readings for a long time. What did he decide? He asked Katie Wells a strange question. He said, "If we run away, what happens to the next civilian ship that comes through here?" Katie looked at her computer and said, "The passenger liner Bright Hope is scheduled to pass through this area tomorrow. It has 3,000 civilians on board." Zekthar's skin turned red with anger, but not at the humans. Captain Cross nodded and said, "Then we fight." Just like that. No discussion about odds or tactics. No call to headquarters for permission. He decided that 3,000 strangers were worth more than 53 crew members. The courtroom was very quiet. Many aliens looked uncomfortable with this decision. I told him this was not logical. 8 ships against 1. We would die for nothing. Captain Cross looked at me and said, "Maybe, but at least we'll die doing our job." Then he ordered all power to weapons and drove straight at the enemy ships. Zekthar walked closer to the center of the room. What happened next was like watching someone fight with their own death. Navigator Katie Wells protested that the maneuver would destroy our ship. Captain Cross asked her if she had a better way to stop the raiders from attacking innocent people. She said no. Then she helped him plot the most dangerous course I have ever seen. The alien's voice became filled with wonder and fear. The Liberty's Edge flew straight into the middle of the enemy formation. The raiders were shocked. No one had ever attacked them like this before. Captain Cross ordered the crew to ram the nearest enemy ship. They used their own hull as a weapon. Jake Sullivan closed his eyes. He had read the report many times. It was classified as one of the most brutal space battles in human history. Chief Engineer Pete Kim was in the engine room. Zekthar continued. The ship was taking heavy damage. Systems were failing everywhere. The reactor was overheating. Pete called the bridge and asked how long the captain needed the engines to work. What did Captain Cross say? He said, "As long as it takes, Pete, as long as it takes," and Pete said, "You got it, Captain." Then he stayed at his post while the engine room filled with radiation and fire. Zekthar's skin turned black with sadness. Pete Kim died keeping those engines running. The radiation killed him slowly over 2 hours, but he never left his post. Other crew members tried to help him, but he ordered them to stay away. He said, "Someone has to keep the ship moving, might as well be me." The alien judge spoke softly. How many crew members survived? 19. Only 19 humans lived through that battle, but they destroyed all 8 enemy ships. The passenger, liner Bright Hope, traveled safely through the nebula the next day. 3,000 people lived because 53 humans decided their lives were worth the sacrifice. Zekthar looked directly at Jake Sullivan. I was badly injured during the battle. Shrapnel cut through my protective suit. I was bleeding and scared, but the surviving humans took care of me. They used their own medical supplies to help me heal. They shared their food and water with me. They treated me like I was one of their crew. The courtroom was completely silent now. When the rescue ships arrived, I expected the survivors to be angry or sad. They had lost 2/3 of their friends. Their ship was destroyed, but they were not crying or complaining. They were already talking about their next assignment. Zekthar's voice became very quiet. I asked Lieutenant Sarah Jones why they were not mourning their dead. She looked at me like I was asking a stupid question. She said, "We'll mourn them. Tonight. Tomorrow we get back to work." That's what they would want us to do. The alien moved back to his original position. The most disturbing part was how normal this was for them. They did not see their sacrifice as heroic or special. They saw it as their job. When I asked Captain Cross why he chose to fight impossible odds, he said, "Because someone has to. And we were the ones who were there." Zekthar's skin became pale gray again. During the 3 weeks I spent recovering on the rescue ship, I talked to many human soldiers. I asked them all the same question. Why do you fight like this? They all gave me similar answers. They said things like, "It's our duty," or "Someone has to do it," or "We protect those who cannot protect themselves." The judge asked, "Did you understand their reasoning?" No, not then. In my culture, we fight for our empire. We fight for territory, or resources, or honor. But humans fight for strangers. They fight for people they will never meet. They fight for the idea that innocent people should be safe. Zekthar looked around the courtroom at all the different alien species. I realized that humans do not see war as something that happens between armies. They see war as something that threatens everyone. So they fight not just as soldiers, but as protectors of all life. This is why they seem so dangerous. They are not fighting for conquest. They are fighting for survival itself. The testimony continued, but the message was clear. Humans were unlike any other species in the galaxy. They fought with a purpose that went beyond military strategy or political goals. They fought as if the future of civilization depended on their personal courage. And maybe, Zekthar thought, it did. The courtroom had been quiet for a long time. Zekthar stood in the center, his skin now completely white. This was a color no one had seen before. It meant he was about to reveal something very important. "I have told you 3 stories," Zekthar said slowly. "But I have not told you why I am here. Why I came to this tribunal to speak against my former allies." The alien judge leaned forward. "Please explain your reasons." Zekthar looked at Jake Sullivan one more time. The human commander's face showed no emotion, but his eyes were alert and watchful. "The war ended 2 years ago. We won. The galaxy is at peace. But I cannot sleep at night. I cannot forget what I learned about humans during those battles. I believe every species in this galaxy needs to understand what we have allied ourselves with." He walked to the large window that showed the stars outside. "At first I thought humans were just very brave warriors. Then I thought they were crazy and did not value their own lives. But after spending 2 years thinking about what I saw, I understand the truth. And the truth terrifies me." The courtroom was completely silent. Even the judge waited patiently for Zekthar to continue. "Humans do not fight wars the way we do. For my people, war is politics. We fight to gain territory or resources. We calculate costs and benefits. When the cost becomes too high, we stop fighting. This is logical. This is smart. Zekthar turned back to face the court. But humans approach war like it is a natural disaster, like a volcano or earthquake that threatens everyone. They do not calculate costs. They do not worry about benefits. They just try to survive by becoming more dangerous than the disaster itself. The judge asked, "Can you give us a specific example?" Yes. During the final month of the war, I was stationed at Forward Base Alpha. Staff Sergeant Mike Torres was in charge of defending the main gate. The enemy attacked with everything they had. Thousands of soldiers, heavy tanks, aircraft. It was their final push to break our lines. Zekthar's voice became emotional again. Mike Torres had only 20 soldiers with him. Command ordered him to fall back to the inner defenses. This was the smart thing to do. But Torres saw something the rest of us missed. Behind our base was a refugee camp. 2,000 civilians, mostly families with children. If the outer defenses fell, the enemy would reach the civilians first. Jake Sullivan knew this story. Mike Torres had been his friend since basic training. They had served together for 15 years. Mike Torres called his commander on the radio. Zekthar continued. He said, "Sir, we have civilians behind us. I request permission to hold this position." His commander told him it was impossible. The enemy was too strong. Mike said, "Understood, sir. We'll do our best." The alien's skin started changing colors rapidly, showing many emotions at once. For 4 hours, I watched 21 humans hold a choke point against an entire army. They used everything they could find as weapons. When their guns ran out of bullets, they threw rocks. When the rocks were gone, they used their bare hands. Zekthar's voice cracked with emotion. Mike Torres built a fortress out of enemy bodies. Dead soldiers stacked like sandbags, broken tanks pushed together to make walls. He turned that gate into a place where the enemy could not pass. When reinforcements finally arrived, they found him still alive, still fighting, covered in blood from 17 different wounds. The judge asked quietly, "How many of his soldiers survived?" 3. Only 3 out of 21. But the civilians were safe. Every single family in that refugee camp lived because Mike Torres decided that a choke point was more important than his own life. Zekthar walked back to the center of the courtroom. After the battle, I asked Mike why he stayed, why he fought impossible odds to protect people he did not know. His answer haunts me still. The alien stopped talking and looked around the room. Every creature there was waiting to hear what the human had said. Mike Torres looked at me with his tired eyes and said, "Because if we don't fight like we're already dead, then people we care about actually will be." Then he asked me a question that changed everything for me. What did he ask? He said, "In your culture, who protects the children when the soldiers run away?" I could not answer him. In my culture, soldiers protect the empire. Civilians protect themselves. But humans see no difference between soldiers and civilians. They are all just people who need protection. Zekthar's skin turned deep blue, the color of profound respect. This is when I finally understood what makes humans so dangerous. They have weaponized hope itself. They fight not because they think they can win, but because they refuse to let others lose. The alien judge spoke carefully. "You seem to admire humans, yet you call them dangerous. Please explain this contradiction." Zekthar looked directly at Jake Sullivan again. "I do admire them. But admiration and fear can exist together. Humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy because they cannot be reasoned with when someone they care about is threatened. They cannot be bargained with. They cannot be scared into surrender." He paused and touched the scar on his side where Tony Martinez had saved his life. "During the war, I saw a human mother defend her child from enemy soldiers. She had no weapons, no training, but she killed 3 armed warriors with her bare hands because they threatened her baby. She died doing it, but her child lived." Courtroom was filled with quiet whispers. Many species found this story hard to believe. I saw human engineers work for 36 hours straight to fix a water purifier in a refugee camp. They had not slept or eaten, but children needed clean water. When I told them to rest, they said, "The kids are thirsty now, not tomorrow." Zekthar's voice became stronger. I saw human doctors treat enemy soldiers with the same care they gave their own wounded. When I asked why they helped people who had been trying to kill them, they said, because they're hurt. That's all that matters. The alien looked around, the courtroom one final time. This is why I am here today, to warn you all about what we have allied ourselves with. Humans are not just soldiers or warriors. They are a species that has turned compassion into a weapon. They fight with love, not hate. They die for strangers, not glory. The judge asked, "What do you believe this means for the galaxy?" Zekthar's skin turned bright gold, a color that meant prophecy or vision of the future. It means we are safe as long as humans consider us friends. They will die to protect us. They will sacrifice everything to keep us from harm. But if we ever become their enemies, he shuddered. I do not think any force in the universe could stop them. Commander Jake Sullivan finally stood up. The entire courtroom turned to look at him. He had been silent through all of Zekthar's testimony. The court recognizes Commander Sullivan, the judge said. Do you wish to respond to these allegations? Jake looked at Zekthar, then at all the alien species watching him. His voice was calm and steady. Everything he said is true. We do fight like that. We do die for strangers. We do refuse to surrender when innocent people are in danger. He paused. And we always will. The commander sat back down without saying anything else. The tribunal adjourned without reaching a verdict. But as the different species left the courtroom, they all carried the same question in their minds. Were humans the galaxy's greatest protectors, or its most dangerous inhabitants? Perhaps, as Jake Sullivan might have said, they were simply whatever the galaxy needed them to be. And that thought both comforted and terrified everyone who heard Zekthar's testimony that day. The truth about humanity was now known across the stars. What each species chose to do with that knowledge would shape the future of the galaxy forever.